We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Raising Our Gifted Children, right here in selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful guest, who's in Mexico, Lainie Liberti. We're going to be talking about her new book, which is Seen, Heard, and Understood, Parenting and Planning. Sorry, I can't read that small writing there, but we'll cover it in a moment. And Liberti has spoken about Worldschooling on TEDx and stage in Amsterdam, written about learning through travel for multiple magazines and academic journals, etc. And she seen, heard, and understood parenting and partnering with your team for a greater mental health. Thank you. Greater mental health. My God, do we need that right now? She's the founder of Transformative Mentoring for Teens that launched in early 2020, offering virtual one-on-one coaching for teens, as well as a 12-week course designed to transform their lives. She's also a certified life coach, specializing in transformational coaching. And she's the co-founder of Project World School with her son she co-founded it in 2012. Sorry, I'm having a little day here. Liberti designs and co-facilitates the World Project School Teen Treats as a month-long immensely learning communities to support self-directed teams from around the world. And over the last 10 years, she has facilitated 20 international retreats for over 100 teenagers, learning through the central immersion, examining personal values, and exploring world views, something that is desperately missing in the educational system. Welcome to the show, love.
Hey, thanks. Thanks so much for inviting me. And yes, you're right. It is missing.
Mm.
I talk a lot about, what the school system doesn't offer and what is missing. And I think a lot of our energy is spent on trying to figure out what's wrong with the system. And I've discovered that the best use of our time is just to focus on bringing in those qualities and bringing in those lessons in spaces that are unconventional,
Mm.
that are, outside of that kind of system.
Real life, right?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, academia is wonderful. We need it to certainly to a point, and know our ABCs and our math and history, etc., etc. We need that to that is the knowledge that we need to use. But if without the wisdom to know how to use the knowledge, we're just knowledgeable creatures with not knowing how to use it. So if they can have world experience, step outside of the classroom, outside of their own environment, and start seeing the world from a different point of view, I think that's when the wisdom starts coming in.
I totally agree with you. I'm actually an advocate for getting your kids out of the system, and I'm not anti-academics. I am really, really pro self-directed learning
Mm-hmm.
and focusing on the things that are important to the individual learner. I think that really is the best way to learn. But again, not focusing on what's wrong with the system and bringing in like an empowering perspective. I think every individual needs to recognize that it's possible to feel self-actualized and empowered. And one of the first steps is the parents recognizing the need to get their kids out of that kind of system, which is really about homogenization, and I would even venture to say indoctrination in some ways.
Mm.
But if you're not even looking at it through those lenses, look at it through, recognizing what's missing. And what's missing is, from the traditional school system is really developing a deep love of learning in context, allowing learners to really fulfill their own passions by following the things that are important to them, and then learning those soft skills. And then finally, the big thing that is really needed, and we're seeing that across the world now, within the adolescent population, is mental health resources. Right. And in the United States, specifically, mental health resources are given at when mental health is
Breaks down.
struggling.
Yeah.
Instead of teaching tools
Hmm.
as a baseline and self-inquiry as something that's as natural as breathing, right? Getting to know our internal worlds is one of the most important skills that you can cultivate, and doing so in a young person, is one of those life skills that will pay off throughout the rest of their
Right.
life.
Um,
Yeah.
I have an analogy that we're all here to discover what our instrument is, learn how to play it, then find the right orchestra where we can be in sync and harmoniously create that symphony that resonates out. But we are responsible for our instrument, and a child is going to try many instruments before they find that one that speaks to them. And I find the school system is too rigid, too
Yeah.
limited, and it doesn't allow a child to explore who they really are and what they can really do. Um, have you heard of the Waldorf schools?
Of course, of
Right.
course.
So
I've done deep investigations into all of the alternatives.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time, and I would have benefited from that because I did not fit into the school system at all. I learned in a totally different way. I was more engaged in the conversation and being inquisitive and then wanting to develop more. And I feel that we're doing our kids an injustice by, quite honestly, taking this beautiful 5-year-old that is full of wonderment and then, kind of putting them on this conveyor belt where
Yeah.
they must conform. They must learn this. The marks must be that. And where is their creativity? Where is their exploration? Where is their understanding? And then you start getting bored kids and they start dropping out. And there's so many repercussions from there. So I think there's a huge overhaul that does need to happen. And I think as a parent, we do need to look at our children. How do they receive their information? How do they interact with others? What are they really interested in? And whether they want to be a rocket scientist today or a doctor tomorrow is, keep nurturing that wonderment, because one day they will find that something that is there for them. But, don't restrict them on their own discovery.
Absolutely. And I think the key to being human, which
Mm,
we all are, is really nurturing our innate ability to be curious. That's
yes,
it. And I think that the school system, as it is in this moment, the traditional, conventional public school system, is set up not to nurture
no,
curiosity, but teaching to tests and evaluations, and there is scope and
conformity.
sequence. There's conformity, which is why I generally just say indoctrination, but
Mm,
it's Eleanor Roosevelt many years ago was asked, what is the purpose of education? And she said, well, of course, to create good citizens. And that gives you a hint as to the point of view coming from those that
mm.
are um, empowered to, and I'm going to use air quotes for those just listening, air quotes here, educating our children. And I think the general public has bought into this story for a long time. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, by the way, but
Yeah, no,
the
no, 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 I like it.
has bought into this story that education is
Mhm.
a product that is given to you by a sage on the stage.
Mm,
And that to me really takes away the interpersonal development of learning. And
mm,
that's really what education is about. Education is about nurturing our innate ability to learn and focusing the curiosity in certain ways. But you know what? We don't need to really focus the curiosity in certain ways these days because the content of what is being taught in traditional education system can be looked up online if that information is needed. We carry around these pocket
Yeah,
computers.
yeah,
Why
exactly.
do we need to memorize dates? That is an antiquated way of learning. Let's talk philosophy. Let's
Mm-hmm.
explore history through the lens of worldviews. Let's integrate all of these great learning vessels into something that is meaningful to our lives, which will make the learning rich and meaningful. And this is not why you brought me here to talk
Oh no, I did. No, 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 no. This conversation is exactly. Um, in raising our gifted children, all of
Yeah,
our children do have gifts, but we
clearly.
we kind of beat the gifts out of them by this conformity,
Yeah,
and that they must have an education, and now they're judged on, how many A's they got. You can't get into a college unless you are up in one of those elites, and it's like, so that means that further education of somebody's opportunity is not there unless they're da 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 da, and of course money behind them, and
right.
it is so limiting. And instead of looking at a child, I mean, this is the thing, I talk a great deal about autism children, and I think they're there to teach us,
They're a
because
gift to the world,
they
aren't they?
are, they are, and what do? They focus in on their gift. Whatever their gift
Yeah.
is, they focus in on that. And that gift is absolutely wonderful. And they don't worry about all the other stuff because it's not what they're here for. This is their gift.
Yeah.
This is what they bring. This is their instrument to the orchestra. Why do they have to know all those other
Yeah.
instruments? They don't.
I totally agree with you. I do. Look, I've brought hundreds of teens to different places around the world, and Project World School was really focused and geared towards serving homeschoolers and
Mm,
unschoolers. And so that was the community that I primarily serve in both Project World School and transformative mentoring for teens. So the mentality is slightly different for those that have been empowered to self-direct their own learning. But what I wanted to say about that is having the privilege of bringing, hundreds of adolescents to different places in the world, taking them outside of their comfort zone
yeah.
and putting them in a space where everything is new
Hmm.
causes us to be acutely present and
Hmm.
aware of our own surroundings and an invitation to be acutely aware and process our internal worlds because our internal worlds are always the reflection of everything that's going on, and our outer worlds can only be perceived through those internal worlds. And so when you say that, kids are meant to try on many different things, this is partially what we set, teens up to do. They're actually wired to try on new
Yes.
identities, but create an atmosphere where it's safe and
Mm.
where the internal world processing is part of the challenge and part of the adventure, and create a not only just safe spaces to be yourself and to poke around and see what's there, but to also unpack and pull apart some of those things that are limiting our experiences, like our own beliefs, like
Mm.
our fears, like some of these worldviews that are given to us by culture or society that really are not in alignment with who they are. So having that opportunity in safe spaces and encouraging that kind of exploration is that's the gift that I give to teens. And I do that through the travel and,
Mm.
the actual physical, take them
Yes.
in outside of their comfort zone. And I do it through the mentoring by giving them challenges and presenting and facilitating these wonderful tools that are really creating a safe space to do this kind of exploration. And if public schools or the school system had this kind of focus as well, I'd be all in. But you
Right.
know what, they don't, and
Yeah.
I'm not all in.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I have a friend who had 9 children, and they were quote, quote, homeschooled.
Wait. Let me just take that in for a moment. 9
Yes, yes.
children.
Yeah. And all homeschooled, but not traditionally homeschooled. He would
Okay.
be like, they discover, I want to do this. And they said, okay, how are you going to do it?
I
You do
love
this
that.
research, you go to the library, you do this. If this is important for you to learn how to use this mountain bike or use this computer program, what are you going to do to learn how to use it? And so it will be, if it's important to you, you're going to do everything you can to learn, and he'll be there to guide, but it had to be something that they wanted enough to invest the time in, right? And
Yeah.
this is, I think, where we go so wrong with our children, is that how do we know what their gifts are if we're constantly dictating the box that they should grow up into, instead of
Yeah.
looking at as the world? And I think the more kids that are exposed to outside of their own environment, other countries, other communities, other cultures, other ways of
Yes.
living, the more it broadens their entire creativity, their entire understanding, and the less you're going to get of me against us, us against them, sort of thing, because they're going to be, we're all in this together. We just have different spices on the food. But they learn so much more from being immersed in other cultures. And I think it lights a spark up inside of them of an exploration that they're not going to get traditionally.
Absolutely. There's a wonderful book by the author Alfie Kohn, and the book is called, and I'm not sure if this is exactly precise, but it's something like punishment by rewards. And he takes apart the school system and talks about the difference between extrinsic motivation to learn something, and you learn something through being rewarded by getting a grade or a gold
Mm,
star, and that becomes your quote unquote training,
yeah.
right? Or those that are intrinsically motivation, like the 9 children of your friend
Mm,
who had a passion and were challenged and empowered to find out how to make that work, or how it works, or how to use the thing. Like that kind of motivation really defines deep and meaningful learning. Intrinsic motivation will
mm.
always be more powerful than extrinsic motivation. And then addressing your comment about getting kids outside of their comfort zone. Heck yeah, do
Yes.
that,
Yes.
right?
How are they going to get comfortable with life if you don't make them feel a little uncomfortable?
Exactly. And understanding that the way that they're viewing the world is only a very teeny little point on this
Mm,
massive globe. And most of the time, children, teens, even adults that don't travel don't understand that their worldview is not the common worldview. The assumption is everybody
yeah.
thinks like me or should think like me
Yeah.
because that's the way I'm seeing the world. I can give you an example of such an aha moment that we all unpacked as a group. Would that be okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my son and I were hosting a retreat in Ecuador, and it was a beautiful immersive learning experience, no curriculum, but all experiential learning. And one of the things that we did is we worked with Pacific Whale Foundation, and we learned about conservation, and we learned about the relationship of the ocean to the community, and the power of keeping the oceans clean and tracking the whales as they migrated from north to south. We also got to see and experience schools of dolphins, and we saw it through the lens of this multinational organization that was really focused on conservation. Then we got to work with the village children that
Mm,
lived in the same village. And we got to work with them through a school. And we noticed that the ocean for them was a place to play. And their place to play encompassed their entire village, right?
Mm,
And their relationship to what we considered litter was very different than what they considered litter and what the conservationists considered litter. It was very one dimensional. There was no trash can in this place, so we
mm,
just put it on the beach. And that was totally acceptable. And as somebody who's coming into another culture, it's never our place to go in and
tell them how to do it.
yeah, that's called colonization.
Yes.
And then the third group of people that we met were the fishermen, and they were the parents most of the time of the children in this village. And they come in after the haul from their daily fishing boats, and they chop off the heads there as their boats are not the heads of people or
You're right.
children
Yeah.
of the fish as they come in, and they anchor right at the shores. And the entire on I think it was like 3 days a week, the entire shores were littered with fish heads, and the cats would come from the shore, and the dogs, and there was fish guts and blood everywhere. And they were so proud. They were such a proud people in this village that they brought all this wealth in, and they could feed their families, and they're sharing their haul. And every single perspective about this one area was different because they
Mhm.
shared a different worldview. And us coming in as a group of teens, well, not me, but
Yeah.
facilitating this group of teens, we all had our different reactions and ideas as to what was right or wrong. And that really became a center point of our conversation, because it really isn't about right or wrong. It's just about perspective. And how do we, as somebody who is walking through the planet, just as the fishermen or the children in the school or the conservationists, how do we come to a space where we can make peace and make space for all these worldviews to work together or live side by side? It takes compassion, it takes conversation, and it takes understanding the perspective you're coming from. So to have these kinds of experiences in real life, we're not just studying it, we
Mhm.
are living this, and we're unpacking it and pulling it apart as a group. This is called deep learning. This is experiential social learning, and we're exploring worldviews. And this is the kind of learning, like you said, will change the world. This
Definitely.
world. Yeah.
Have you ever read the book Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson?
No, but what a great
Oh,
title.
no, but you know what? I think you would really like it because it helps you actually understand personality traits. We all have our own personality trait. It's how we're going to receive information, how we're going to speak to information. Again, it's those different points of views. And it's about two mice and two men that live around an abundance of cheese, and one day the cheese is gone. And it's the reaction to the cheese being gone. Sniffy and Scurry go and sniff out and scurry around looking for more cheese. Him
Right.
and Ha, well, Ha is like, I don't know what to do. The cheese is gone. And until eventually Ha is so hungry, well, I guess I've got to go look for it elsewhere. And him, give me back my cheese. Who do I have to sue? Who do I have to kill? Right. And if we actually understand what our personality trait is like, because I'm a true colors coach as well, if we understand what our personality trait is, then we actually understand how we're actually going to perceive things, how we're going to interact. And it helps us actually have a better understanding of how to listen to each other. Oh, that person sees it from that perspective. This person sees it from that perspective. None of the perspectives are wrong. They're just a different point of view. But when you put them all on the table and then decide to put that puzzle together, that's when you can get the clearer picture.
Absolutely. I've written down the title. I'm going to look this book up.
They've also done it in a beautiful illustration book for children as well, for young children.
Oh,
But
that's
it's one of
spectacular.
those small, short little books that has such an impact because, again, the system wants one size that fits all. Drones, right? Um,
Yeah,
and we're
works.
not. We're very, very diverse in the way we receive, the way we understand it. You can point something out. This is that. No, I see it as this, and somebody I see it as that. Well, instead of making it a competition with each other, make it like, how do you see that? Oh, I see it now. And start learning what other perspectives are. Again, we're building that beautiful 3D picture where we have a better understanding instead of our ego saying to us, I'm right because I see it this way, you're wrong because you don't see it my way.
Absolutely. My son and I spent about 3 years in Peru, and we fell in love with the ancient cultures, pre-Columbian cultures, and we ended up spending a couple of those years in Cusco in the Andes. And partially it was because I was passionate. I fell in love with the history and
Mm-hmm.
the archaeology and the anthropology and the traditions of the Andean people, and it taught me so much. But what I learned was alternative
Mm.
telling of history. And for me, it was really fascinating to learn that the Peruvian government, they were the ones that we're in charge of the
Mm.
tourism. I guess most countries are,
Yeah.
but that what that meant was there was an official story that they could tell, say about Machu Picchu,
Mm-hmm.
and the story was, come to Machu Picchu, the land of the Incas. Come see this beautiful structure that they built near the clouds, right? But all the people that live in the Andes understand and know that the Incas were there 500 to 600 years ago. And they stumbled upon this beautiful structure and built upon it. So can you imagine? And that's what the belief is.
Mm.
And that is what they've been, their traditions have told them throughout, family traditions throughout the years. But can you imagine the tourism board, come to Peru and see Machu Picchu, the land where the Incas found and built upon? I mean, it doesn't have the same sort of ring to it.
Right.
And what we understood was there's many ways to tell one story,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as humans, yes, we have this pursuit of what we believe should be truth. And that's part of human nature. But a lot of times it creates this black and white thinking. And the black and white thinking really blocks us off from
Mm.
accepting and integrating all of these other points of view. So
Right.
going back to your book, Who Moved
My
My Cheese?
cheese.
Like that helps make it make sense because it
Yes.
gives you a fuller picture. I don't really know what the truth is, and I somehow have to be okay with, living my whole life not really knowing which story. I mean, I've also heard stories that the aliens built Machu Picchu
Mm.
and that, like, all these other potential possible wonderful stories that have been told from generation to generation to generation also have a great, space to tell the reality from that perspective.
I think
So
it's what truth resonates with you. That's the thing. When you feel a gut connection to a truth, oh, this one I believe, right? This one I believe. But that doesn't mean that none of the other things happened because there is no just one, there is many. And again, it all comes down to the different perspectives, the different understandings. When we open up our, I'm a knowingness teacher. So when you open up your heart, the divine knowledge can go through your heart in truth. It ignites the energies in your spirituality to open up your mind to know what your mind needs to know when it needs to know it. I
we
call that the knowingness. The mind has knowledge and information it's gathered along the way, data and programming. But it
really
is knowledge. What do you do with that knowledge? You need the wisdom that literally comes from the soul, the spirit, the heart, to actually understand how to use that knowledge. What we're teaching kids is knowledge. What we're not teaching them is how to gain wisdom. And only when you're immersed in those places, like Peru, even Mexico, cultures, history, immersing ourselves in nature, immersing ourselves in outside of our limitations, and start connecting from that beautiful source of energy that comes through us, do we gain the wisdom to understand which knowledge is relevant at that time?
Hence the value of exploring those internal worlds.
Yes.
Because if we turn off this space within ourselves, our internal worlds, which are influenced through psychology
Mm.
and spirit and godliness and
Yes.
knowledge and all of this other stuff, that's what peppers and flavors the us that we carry
Mm.
around through the world. But again, public institutions
Yes, I know.
off.
I've never done well in any one of them.
Me neither.
You know, I've been doing this 10 years and I was a spiritual coach beforehand. And I can tell you the amount of people, 50, 60, you know, is 70, 80, right up, you know, to the 90s, who have realized they've been living a lie. They've been living a dictation of what they should be. In other words, they've been living outside in life and not an inside out
Inside
life.
out. Mhm.
And the amount of people that then had either the tap on the shoulder and they followed it, or the cosmic 2x4 that flattened them and they had to regrow. And they decided to take that path and go through that process of their own discovery of themselves from the inside out and tune in to this beautiful universal energy and the awakening of who they become. Every single one of them, despite the horrors that may have hit them with the cosmic 2x4, said none of them would have changed anything because of who they are today, living in their truth, their inside truth. Now, why do we have to wait for our kids to grow up, to be 30, 40, 50, for them to realize they've been living in exterior lie, an illusion, a delusionment, and the truth lies within them? And now they have to learn how to access that. Why are we not teaching our children to be the inside out
Well,
child?
I am.
Right? You know, live from the inside out, right from the word go, and then they're going to bypass all that trauma and drama and be in tuned with the planet, be in tuned with the universe, be in tuned with their role here.
I think a lot of it has to do with intergenerational trauma. And I think a lot of that has been designed to keep us separate, right? Because those of us that are
And
our
in
age,
fear.
and that love to work with children, we are othered by them because
Mm.
culturally it's not really acceptable to connect with a peer, a friend, a partner who is years older than you, right? It's looked as weird. I mentor teens, and I've got a really good um,
Rapport.
you report. Yeah, words. Sometimes they don't come. Sometimes they come. Sometimes they don't. But I do have a really good rapport working with teens, and a lot of that has to do with the trauma that I experienced in my childhood, and then through my own struggles during adolescence. And yeah, my book is called "Seen, Heard, and Understood." Those were the three things that I was not
Yes.
when I was.
And you're speaking to a huge population
Yes,
of not seen, heard, or understood. This is what is wrong with society right now.
absolutely, absolutely. And so to be able to have the skill and the passion and the desire to connect without judgment and to be there for them and to work in partnership with them is one of the biggest things that I'm giving to the planet and that I'm encouraging other parents to do. If you can walk side by side with your teen instead of pulling them or pushing them in a direction, that's inequality, first of all.
Right.
I'm talking about partnership parenting. I'm talking about creating a whole new dynamic in the parenting process. And if you haven't, practiced peaceful parenting or gentle or conscious parenting or attachment parenting from birth, start now. It doesn't matter. Start now. Challenge your belief systems. Move into a space of partnership because only through partnership can you facilitate a mental health journey with your teen, right?
It's I have three children all in their 30s, one about to be 40 this year. How did that happen? And I was one of those mums that, yes, I'm your mother, but I'm also your friend.
Yeah.
right? And no, 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 you shouldn't be a friend to your children. They've got to know you're in charge, you're the boss. And it's like, I can't do that. Now, they do know that when mama set into a certain tone, mama was still with a certain tone, that she was the boss and you've pushed too far. Um, but in that friendship, we had a round table for dinner. When they came home from school, they could bring anyone home when we sat down for goodies. And then who was staying for dinner? And it was always a round table. And that's where the conversation was, whatever the conversation had to be. And it's like nothing, off limits, as long as again respectful. And obviously, whatever their answers were according to the age group that they were in and what they could understand. But I got frowned upon by other parents for my thinking like this. And even my son said I should have had more discipline. And I said I was trying to instill your own conscience and your own boundaries. You and your own conscience knowing that boundary of when it's too far.
So
And if you decide to step over that boundary, there are consequences and only you can pay for those.
absolutely. Yeah, I didn't practice punishment in my family. I didn't raise my child with punishment at all. We always faced the natural consequences of whatever the situation was, and we faced it as partners. I sat in a place of non-judgment. So if he was talking about this, I didn't have a reaction like that's not appropriate or
Mhm.
that's wrong or how dare you. We just unpacked it as it was, and that gave him a real sense of who he was, and there
Yes.
was no shame around that. He was not putting things into his shadows. He
Yeah.
was not, where of course we have to unpack that much later on,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I can't
So
say it was that easy for me. I had a tumultuous relationship with my husband, so it was always trying to balance that, and it ended up my son being the mediator between us, and actually my kids telling me, "Mom, it's time to divorce." And I said, "Well, I'm waiting for the youngest to leave home." "No, Mom, now."
now,
And then they ended up kind of being the ones to nurture me, which is still a weird thing, but it's I did do some punishment with them. Perhaps it was compared to other people not enough, but there were the boundaries that sometimes you have to set a boundary for. But I wanted them to instill, to listen to their inner selves and know this is wrong. My conscience tells me it's wrong, so I shouldn't do it. And if you do it and you're paying for those consequences, you made that choice. And that's the empowerment of choice. It can work for you or it can work against you. Listen to your instincts, listen to your gut. Is it telling you to do it or not to do it? And they had to learn those boundaries for themselves, because I'm not going to be with them 24/7 all their lives. And they've got to know how to deal with something when it goes wrong, or to
clearly.
listen to their inner voice and know, no, that's not the road for me, and honor themselves. But it's in the environment that they grew up in, school, this, that, etc., peers, much harder. The way you're doing it with your son, he's immersed in all of this beautiful other culture and kind of become that mentor even for the other teens
Yeah,
that you've brought in, right?
yeah,
So for him, he's in that world, that beautiful world of that, where I was still balancing. I'd love to have been in that world, but I was balancing that world.
yeah. You know what? We just all have our own experiences,
Yeah.
and it's really okay. My son now is no longer a teen; he is
Mm-hmm.
23. But we left the United States, where we're originally from, when he was 9,
Mm-hmm.
and just turning 10 years old, and we lived nomadically
Yeah.
up until, well, now both of us are based here in Mexico. But he doesn't live with me. He's got his own apartment. He's
Mm-hmm.
living his own life, and it's pretty lovely. But he does come up and do his laundry, and I'm so honored when he does. Like, how cool is that? It's a cliche, but how cool is that?
Yeah.
Um, but it's really a wonderful way to walk through the planet. We walk through the planet in partnership.
Mm-hmm.
We were intentional about creating our scaffolding or our framework, and that was we were going to make all decisions in consensus.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to try and say yes to everything. We were not going to live by anybody's rules, but we needed to be acutely aware of what our core values were individually and the core values that we held as a family unit. So when a challenge or a question or a decision needed to be made, we're not following rules, but we're running that through the filter of our values. And we could ask ourselves clearly, is this in alignment?
Yes.
And we would know immediately. There's
Yeah.
no
Because you
merit.
were in tuned. You were in tuned. That's the thing. That's what we should be teaching our children. Their
Yes,
intunement, their inner voice. That
absolutely.
that little voice that says, no, don't do that. It doesn't matter if you're getting peer pressure. It doesn't matter that somebody's demanding that. If it doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. Don't push against that because that is your core compass. Learn to listen to your compass. And if they did, we wouldn't have so many dysfunctional people out there.
Exactly. And one of the biggest gifts in our family culture was when one of us got triggered, because that gave us the beautiful opportunity to go on this exploratory mission to find out what that core belief or fear was that we were holding on to. And he helped me unpack my triggers. I helped him unpack his triggers. And these were the biggest gifts because
Yes.
we were supporting each other's emotional intelligence and we were empowering one another to change our beliefs and hold each other accountable for responding
Mhm.
in a new way instead of being in reaction mode.
Yes. Yes.
That's really cool. So yeah, high emotional intelligence. I think that's what schools should teach too.
Yeah. I think the greatest gift you can give anybody is your vulnerability in
Absolutely.
trust. But of course, it's, you've also got to trust your instincts and listen to the whole of you as to whether this is a person that you can give your vulnerability to. And
Absolutely.
you and your son had that trust, you had that vulnerability where there was no shame or blame, just an acknowledgement and a help of release,
Yeah.
right? And that is so important because we've been taught as a society to judge and then to blame and then to shame. And this is why we end up with people not wanting to open up or not wanting to talk about it because the fear of that ridicule or that persecution. And this has become a massive problem in the society, Western society especially, because nobody wants to come forth with their truth for the fear of.
Yeah, that's why there are so many mental health
Yes.
challenges right now because we feel disconnected. And I think perhaps this might be by design, culturally, by design, because the more disconnected you keep
And
a
keep them in
population
fear, right?
in fear, you could control anybody, keep anybody in fear.
Mm-hmm,
I mean,
mm-hmm.
it's been used in governmental programs for eons,
Ever. Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was a beautiful study done about maybe 15 years ago, and it was exploring the core reasons, the core sort of contributing factors to addictions, and it's
Mm.
one of many potential outcomes. Um, and that core factor was not feeling connected.
Yes. To self or anyone else. And, we're taught that everything we want is on the outside.
Not true.
And that is just going to lead to more and more emptiness. Everything you want, all your abundance, all your truth, all your love, all your peace, all your purpose is on the inside.
Uh,
And when you connect to that and you connect to that higher energy, Gus, God, universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, when you connect to that energy and you realize we're particles of the universe, we're particles of what people call God. We're all made of the same material. So we're connected. So why are we not drawing on these resources of these beautiful energies and allowing it to go through us?
Stardust. I love
Yes.
that. I
Yeah.
love
We're all
that.
made out of it. And um, I wish we actually, in a way, we do. I have a 15-month-old grandson, and I just, oh,
Congratulations
he's,
so much.
oh, I'm there 2 days a week where I look after him, and it's just like, it's when my daughter said to me when she had him, Mum, how did you do it with 3? And I said, I don't know, I just did it. And you're so busy being a mum and taking care of all the things in every moment. And if you got some sleep, hallelujah. So nobody documented or remembered anything, right? So you just did it. But now I've got the luxury of really watching him. And one of the things I absolutely love watching is when he's playing and then he stops and an eyebrow goes up and the mouth goes down and he's having this internal conversation with himself. And I just love watching him in his own little discovery. And I think if we could honor our children in their little discovery and nurture it and encourage it and learn from it, we'll find our way back to our beautiful inner child of innocence and wonderment that we sold out when we went to conformity.
And I think for adults, the key to that is through playfulness.
Yes.
So
Play with a child.
play
Play
with
with a puppy or a kitten. Play with something that is just abundantly happy. All right?
Yeah, exactly.
Silly billies. I mean, I used to put on Queen's We Are the Champions and we'd all sing to the top of our voices.
I love that.
And if I got mad at my children, I started singing opera and they'd do anything to shut me up. So it's be playful, and
Absolutely.
we've forgotten how to play. We've forgotten how to be light, and we don't know how to listen, to hear, or to understand. We don't, because we're so saturated with outside that we've forgotten how to listen inside. Switch everything off on the outside. Go to a place where that outside doctrine is not relevant, is not prevalent, is not there, and immerse yourself in a childlike manner to rediscover your own inner child.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I work with teens with playfulness.
Mm.
They're moving through a stage where they're transitioning from children into adults. And this middle stage that we call adolescence is so filled with so many changes, developmental changes from a neurobiological
Yeah.
perspective, from a psychological perspective, from a social perspective, from a cultural perspective. There are so many changes, and a lot of times they lose their sense of play.
Yes.
So we do lots of improv, and structured in such a way that, I mean, improv is great because it allows you to be silly and fun, but it also allows you to let down those guards.
Right.
And that helps us really touch back in on our own creativity, in our own humanness, right? I mean, creativity, it's all part of
The gift of being a human.
yeah.
Right? It really is. And we've forgotten that. I mean, imagine the kind of leaders those children are going to be, right?
Amazing.
Not only are they going to listen and to learn, but they're going to listen and learn to understand, not to
And
judge.
they're going to question everything. And that is
Yes.
going to be a gift for the world.
And hopefully hold people accountable, because I'm saying it doesn't matter who we are, where we are, and what's going on in life. We do have to hold ourselves accountable and be responsible for our choices.
Yeah.
You didn't choose what happened to you, but it is your choice what you do with it. And if we could teach our children that even when a bunch of doo-doo comes on you, it's plant it in a plant with a flower and make something out of it. Don't just sit there with the doo-doo on you crying, right? Is that we can always turn something that's unpleasant into something that's more purposeful.
Yeah.
And we don't teach our children that.
Well, I do.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. That's why they're going to make great leaders in any chosen field, because they've learned that anything is possible. It's a question of what you feed, what you water, what you nurture. Because what it is whatever it is you're seeding and watering is what's going to grow. And if you're constantly seeding possibilities and opportunities, that is what will grow.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, teenage years are hard because of all the chemistry going on. They're no longer a child. They don't feel an adult. They're stuck in between. They can get very surly. They will sometimes remind me of The Exorcist with the head spinning around, because the personalities can change completely. And it's a tough time, to be a person as a teenager. But it's also a time where they really do need to discover their voice and feel they have a voice.
Yeah. Well, they need to be given space to
Yeah.
explore their voices and not be judged
Mm.
on this exploration or that exploration, not be judged on, choosing to dye their hair blue.
Right.
That kind of thing is about expression.
Mhm.
And the adolescent years are made for trying on new identities,
Yeah.
made for that kind of, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Again, self-discovery, right?
Yeah.
And that self-discovery is something that can be absolutely awesome if we allow it. If we stood as a spectator and watched them in their self-discovery and kind of jump in. Okay, I love the blue. What color shall I go with my hair? It's everybody's always seeking permission to
Yeah.
be. And why do you need permission? That permission lies within inside you. It's not somebody else's right to give you a permission.
So true. Absolutely true. I'm just resonating with what you're saying. And yeah, yeah. I think one of the things, okay, so we know that the adolescence is a really special stage, but I think one of the things that parents forget is how difficult it actually is to
Mm,
go through adolescence.
yeah.
And the book that I wrote, it's really got three parts. One of the parts is unpacking all the biological, neurobiological, psychological, and physical changes. And it's important to understand that, because if you're a parent and you're reading that my teen is going through all this stuff,
Yes.
okay, I can exhale a little bit because
Mm,
I get it. So that's the first part. The second part is really talking about partnership and partnership parenting and starting to move the goalpost in terms of what parenting looks like. We don't
mm,
have to dominate and control, because domination and control and authority comes from a place of fear, right?
mm.
So we think, we identify that we want to dominate, control, and tell them what to do, the authority of what to do, because it's what's best for them. When in actuality, it's really what's most convenient for the parent, because it's
Mhm.
hard to raise a teen. So if we're parenting from our convenience sake, we're not showing up for our kid in a
Right.
way that they need to be showed up for. And then the third part is really using tools.
Mhm.
Let's take a look at these psychological tools. Let's look at our triggers and outline them and be aware of that. Let's unpack emotions. Let's identify our emotions in real time. And it's an invitation for parents to look at their shadows and use these tools first. And the way
Mhm.
we connect as a parent is through those spaces of vulnerability, through those spaces of being human and saying, look, I got some trauma I'm healing, and I know that because look at these triggers. There's
Mhm.
fears, there's unmet needs in my inner child. So when you walk by and slam a door and don't say a word to me, something inside of me is getting triggered. I might be using the words from my authoritarian perspective. Now I'm not going to do that because I recognize it. You must respect me. That is so disrespectful. But when in actuality, under those words, it's I have a wounded child that wasn't
Mhm.
seen either. And that's
Mhm.
what's being triggered. And that's how we stop the perpetuation of these generational wounds. Because if you continue to tell them that they're disrespectful and live and respond to your triggers, they're going to just learn the same behavior and parent that way.
And the
So
cycle goes on and on and on. Yeah.
start moving in partnership, commit to your own healing as a parent, and you'll be able to facilitate a very healing space for your children as well, for your teens. Yeah.
I think, going back to the vulnerability, if your
Mm,
children know that you're vulnerable, that you've had things that have happened to you, and
yeah.
that you are willing to open up with them, you're opening up in trust. They're
Ab-
they're now have that permission to actually understand why you do what you do, why you think the way you think. And then they've got more of the permission to be able to talk to you about it. Hey, mom, have you tried this? Or how about we do that instead of this? And then we think that, no, we've always got to be the parent, and parent should never be told what to do by the child. But why don't we give them a voice, because they can see it from a different point of view? And why don't we share our vulnerability? Don't load it all off at once. Don't overpower them, please. And then, ask them for some compassionate understanding, but allow them to speak to their observation without slapping them down. You're empowering them to see things differently, maybe come up with a conclusion or an understanding or an observation, but you're also giving them the respect and the value of trusting them with your vulnerability.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's about that trusting
Yeah.
connection. And I'll give you an example of this in action. I was raised by a very controlling mother, extremely controlling, and I had a lot of childhood trauma. I was yelled at all the time. There was a lot of healing that I had to do around that. And a lot of that was about my mother asserting control over me. So it was authoritarian, it was controlling, it was not a very pleasant
No.
childhood, to say the least. And after sharing all of this with my son, he knew, this is the trauma that I went through. And also recognizing when you're healing your own trauma, that trauma will always be a part of you. You don't get rid of it. You
No.
learn to integrate it and make it make sense. And so that comes with a lot of internal work, self-inquiry and so forth. And so one of the things that I said to my son was, look, this is the trauma that I had, the reaction that I have, which is a trauma response, may sometimes look like me getting impatient and trying to get you to do things in ways so it makes it more convenient for me. Call me out on it. And the words that you need to use is, you're acting like your mother, and that will stop me dead in my tracks. He didn't use it. I trusted him. He didn't
Yes.
use it to be a jerk. He
Right.
used it so we could co-facilitate each other's healing, so that our present was filled with our presence, right? I didn't want to bring in my childhood trauma into this relationship, but I can't help it sometimes because
No,
that's how
because
I'm
it's
wired.
who you are and when we talk about releasing traumas, you never forget the trauma doesn't go away. What you do though is you let go of the suffering that trauma has given you, right?
Absolutely.
So you hear people who will talk about something that happened to them and think, how can you talk about it? I'm no longer attached to it. It is something that happened to me, but I am no longer afraid of it or caught up in the emotion of it. I am detached, and I think that's what we've all got it. And this whole thing about just obliterating it, no, it's also part and parcel of what's made you, right? It's the
Absolutely.
building blocks. So sometimes you can look at it and go, okay, all right, it sucked, but I wouldn't be on the path I'm on if I hadn't gone through that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So again, it's not always happening to us. Sometimes it's happening for us and we don't understand. But then somebody watching us may do. They may understand. They may have an insight. And I think we need to be more open. And that means people need to learn to speak to each other without the judgment, the assumption, or the dictatorial tone of voice with it, but just like, have you noticed, or I feel, and let that person feel safe.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so crazy that I met you, just before this conversation, and like we're yakking like we've known each other for years. Really on the same page. And I think it's really
Absolutely.
wonderful having these sorts of conversations.
It's, that I would have loved to have been in your world, and being one of those teens, because I would have thrived that way. I just,
Me too.
I did not do well in school at all. I was really not designed for it. I was always a child that philosophy, that knowingness, those conversations, those discoveries is really where the knowledge was. The knowledge I needed to know at the time I need to know it, and the other stuff, what do I need to know it for? You know, it's in the data bank if I ever do need it, or I can look it up. But I don't need to carry this extra knowledge around. I need to carry the knowledge around that is relevant to my existence in my presence.
Yeah.
And we're always preparing people for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hey, there's today here.
The best thing that you could do, going back to our initial conversation about education, the best thing you can do is to help cultivate a deep love of learning in your
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
Then they can discover anything at any time. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And, you know, a lot of that is read to your children, get them
Yeah.
interested in books. My little Roro, my 15-month-old grandson, has been read to almost from the day he's been born.
Yeah.
All right. And he sits there snuggling, and sometimes no, he's off running around, and other times he'll sit there, and he's far too young to understand the story. Right. It's or get what it is. But when you step into tones and voices and things like that, that's what makes him immersed. We've planted the seed.
Yeah.
Right? That seed will grow. And if we could teach people, this is something that I'm finding so much with not so well young people, but most certainly a lot of people don't read anymore. They read headlines. They read the first 2 lines, and then they come up with an assumption of the rest, and they're not reading content, and they're wondering why they're getting no depth.
Yeah. 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 All of that.
All right. So, you know, we as a society have to stop the titillation of instant gratification, and realize if we want to know more, we have to be more in exploration and read more, learn more, immerse ourselves into it, because that's the only way. And if you do that, I believe that inspiration begets invitation.
Yeah.
When you inspire someone, you're inviting someone to go on that path of their own self-discovery. So if you want to influence someone, be that light that turns them on, be that inspiration, and allow that light to shine on them, not to tell them exactly what to do, but you've inspired them to do something that's coming out within them that wants to grow.
Absolutely. I hope to be that light for as many teens as I can as possible, but I also hope that parents will pick up my book and become that for their own children as well.
Yes. Again, the inspiration. You're taking everything that you've done and everything that you know and everything that you've worked through, and you've put it in this book, which is not only enlightening and educational, but will have those aha moments for them, you know, that relatability. Oh, yeah, that's me. Or I wish that was me. Or that can be me. Right. And it's, you, as I say, you could take a horse to water. You can't make it drink. Leave it there long enough and it realizes it's thirsty.
Yeah.
So if this book is there in front of them, somebody's bought it for them as a gift, the kids have bought it for them as a gift, and make it a family read.
Yeah.
And then have that wonderful conversation afterwards of what each one of you got from it.
I love that. I love that. I've been sharing like pieces for my book with all sorts of people all around the globe, and I have a group of home educated families that have a co-op that chose my book as this month's reading, and they're
Excellent.
each, having these aha moments. Parents, and I get to see them in 160 characters on Twitter. It's really cool. It's
Wonderful, wonderful. And that's that's the thing. You can only inspire those that are ready to receive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But if that inspiration is out there, then that means those that are ready to receive, they know where to go. It's there. They can pick it up, right? And that's the important thing. There is no one size that fits all. I bet if you had a conversation with 5 people who read your book, each one of them is going to get something different out of it.
Totally.
But that's the beauty of it,
Yeah.
right? Because especially if they're in a conversation, because it's, oh, I didn't see it that way. I saw it that way. Oh, that sounds good. We're broadening that spectrum. We're adding all those beautiful pieces to the puzzle, and we're getting a clearer picture. But we've got to be willing to participate.
Absolutely. And like we talked about earlier, see it from different perspectives.
Yes.
Be open
Yes.
to different perspectives as well.
Yeah. And that's where that, I said, that move, that cheese is very, very good at that, because you after reading, you go, oh, okay, I'm that one. You kind of know who you are, and you immediately recognize other people. They must be him, and it's, as I said, there's some people you're never going to get to change, never. You know, they want that cheese back no matter what. And other people need a bit of prodding, and other people are, okay, where is it? Off I go. And it is nurturing people in their own perspective, in their own presence of who they are. And people are going to grow at their own level. And that one thing about education, it wants everybody to grow exactly the same at the same time. And we don't. As human beings, we don't.
I mean, we're not all meant to do the same thing in life. So
No,
why are we educated the same
I don't
way?
know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a conveyor belt, really, in a production
Oh,
line.
yeah.
And it's like, I think we miss out on so many people. Again, so many people I've interviewed as CEOs, and they went on to have excellent careers, but they always wanted to be an author.
Oh,
And, you know, one of them, she was in a traffic jam and a children's story came out and she ran out of paper, started writing on her hand. And
I
now
love
she quit her job. She's an international, she's actually just become a mother, but she's an international story writer for children. That Sherry Think. And it just came from that, I have to do it. I have to do it. And they're willing to walk away from everything, and despite the success, is that I have to do this. And when you get that, go with it. Don't deny it. Go with it.
totally. I agree. Yeah.
So if somebody is listening to this and would love their teen to be a part of it, what is the process?
Well, I would say as a parent, pick up my book, of course. That
Yes.
goes without saying. But if you have a teen, um, who may be interested in taking one of my courses. I teach 12-week courses for ages 15 on up to about 22. That's about the top of the age. And they're it's like I said, a 12-week course, and it meets every week, and we've got challenges, and every week we're diving deep into some space within the internal worlds, and we stay connected every week through Discord, which is a medium where teens are constantly engaging anyway. And then I also teach with my son, co-teach with him for a younger group, ages about 10 to 14, and we do an 8-week course for them. And it's starting to prime self-inquiry,
Mm.
and we do it through gamification model. So, like we talk about worldviews.
Hmm.
So we dissect all the different elements or lenses that you can use to define your worldview, and then we create characters and we put them in spaces together, and we draw them and things like that. So it's really sort of a gamification of these skills or concepts to start off with for the 8-week for the younger groups. All that stuff, plus I offer one-on-one mentoring, and it's usually based on a specific need or a specific challenge that I help them work through. But I'm really of the mindset that I am not going to solve their problems. I will walk side by side with them and
Hmm.
become a mentor and a friend to them. But if there's something I can do to give them the tools, they can facilitate their own journey. But sometimes we just need to have that facilitator walk that path with them
Yeah, the supporter.
to support them. And I've got teens that I've worked with 10, 12 years ago that still call me,
Hmm.
Auntie Lainie or travel mom or just friend. Like
Yeah.
I've got handfuls that we just check in on each other. Hey, how's that new job going? Or, how are you doing in this relationship? Like we're friends, and it's
Mm.
like I'm that person that shows up for them. And
Right.
that's really important. So you can find me at Transformative Mentoring for Teens, and that's where all of my resources are for teens. There's also a link to my book and so forth. And about twice a year, I work with another unschooling mom. And we formed a company called Partnership Parenting. So it's based on the partnership paradigm that I talk about in my book. And we run workshops, online workshops for parents that really need help unpacking some of these skills and moving into greater partnership. And you can find that at partnershipparent.com. And then, of course, you can find me at Project World School. We're hoping that we can run more trips. We ran our first trip in 2 years just a couple months ago here in Mexico, but the international travel scene
Yeah.
is quite limited due to 2020 and beyond. So I'm hoping that I can start going back to doing more of these trips. My son is really hoping. We're starting to talk about, rerunning our Japan trip and maybe going back to Thailand.
Mhm.
But again, everything is still up in the air with travel restrictions
Yeah.
and so forth. Mexico's a really good place because the restrictions have not been so restrictive and it's been pretty open. But, we want to get back to bringing teens to different places around the world like we have been. I mean, we've been through Project World School, we've been to the UK, we've been to, like I said, Thailand, Japan, Vietnam. We ran trips in Peru, my favorite place.
Mhm.
Uh, Mexico, Ecuador. We've been to South Africa.
I lived there.
Oh, yay!
Yeah,
Where?
12 years. Cape Town and Johannesburg, but Cape
Oh,
is
nice.
less.
We were in the Eastern Cape. We went to Bulangula with our
Mm,
group, which was amazing. Oh my gosh. And then we were in Joburg
mm.
and did the whole circuit around I can't remember the young boy's name that started the
Woof, that's what the name is.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And then, of course, we went to the Apartheid Museum and then we
Mm,
went to Kruger Park. What a full trip that was with our
yeah,
group of teens there.
yeah.
But I love it that, the experiential learning is deep and social learning and community is just powerful and meaningful. So,
And again, I think it makes more rounded leaders. I mean, the trouble is with the leaders of the world right now, they're coming at everything from just one perspective and it's theirs, and they're not going to compromise, they're not going to listen, they're not going to do anything. They want what they want. And they want it their way, and we're seeing that's a dictatorship, and we're seeing that. But when
or
you've got
fascism even.
and when you've got the young leaders that have had more worldly travel, that have seen other cultures, that understand things from the core, from the very seeding up, it just gives them a much broader spectrum of what is needed in the world and how to be a better leader. So I look forward to all of these young people that you're taking as being stepping into those leadership roles and showing people how things really should be led. Lead by example for a start. And that's a big one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
And of course, your
yeah.
book is on Amazon as well. So
Cool.
you can find it there, right?
Yes.
And, I want to say, gift a book. I think it's one of the greatest gifts you can do. If you know somebody who's preteens, my nieces and nephews have that. And my poor 8-year-old sister has just had them for a few weeks and she didn't know what to do with them. She said, I have no communication with them. They're on their phones the whole time. And it was just like two strangers sitting in a room with no wonderment on her life, and just not, everything she tried to do to kind of make them take them to museums or this or that, they were just bored. And so we really do need to prepare our kids for the teens and then help them
Yeah.
navigate through that, because I think if we go wrong in the teens, that's where we end up with the problem as an adult. So it's the more that they can see outside there in the world beyond their little bubble, I think better human beings they're going to be. And learn
I
about the
totally agree.
environment, learn about other, humanity as a whole, learn about politics, and learn about so many things in the world. I mean, it's just a wonderful worldly education. More
I
people need to
totally
have that.
agree.
Absolutely. Something, as I said, I wish I had done. I wish I'd done with my kids. It wasn't possible, but
Carlos, he wanted to make sure that he had a presence in this
right.
interview.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And he agrees with everything, right? And that's another thing. Please pay attention to your
Absolutely.
animals, because they are so intuitive. They are so wise. And if we could actually be in tuned with them, they have a lot to tell us in their own way. We should just be a bit more open. Be more open to receiving information in different ways, not just the one linear way. So back to your site.
Yeah.
You have projectworldschool.com. You have transformative. Oops, are you still there?
Yeah, can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yeah, I just say my internet is dropping. Worldschoolfamilysummit.com.
Yes.
And we are worldscholars.org.
No, World Schoolers.
Schoolers.com. I haven't got my glasses on. World Schooling Summit. And then you're on YouTube. And
I'm all over.
you're
Yeah.
all over, right? And the book, again, is called Seen, Heard, and Understood. Please, folks, it's a great gift to give a book, especially if you're willing to have a conversation about it afterwards and everybody share their different perspective. It's such an eye-opener. And it really can be something that could be so incredibly healing and give you such insight to wherever you are in your life right now. So please, don't have to wait for Christmas or birthdays. You can give a book anytime. Thank you so much for being here. This has been absolutely wonderful.
No.
I love the work you're doing.
I'm so honored to have.
And I've got to introduce you to Duwati.
Thank you.
Sorry, you're cutting in and out there.
I think there's a delay in your internet right now.
Right, yeah,
but
exactly.
It's such an honor to meet you and share this hour with you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to introduce you to a couple of other people that I think you would really love the work that they do as well. And what they're doing in preparing teens for the world. And so I think it might be some good integration there. So folks, remember, please give this book. Remember, if you have preteens, don't lord over your kids as ruler, judge and executor. You know, it's you were there once. Try and listen, try and learn, be there. Help them find that compass within themselves. We're custodians of our children. We don't own them. We're here to help them navigate through life. So help them in any way you can. And if you can send them on the strip and do these courses, please do, because that's exactly what they need in order to be heard, be seen, and be understood. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations or follow us on Patreon, and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.